Welcome back, Ethans. Okay, so you're going to notice that my setup is a little bit different. A lot of you guys are going to know that I've had a little bit of a change in my situation, but I didn't want to keep missing videos, so this is going to be a little bit more unrefined than what I normally do. But Imbolc just happened February 1st. It is more or less the spring festival of the pagans, and it goes way back. So, as most of these festivals do, you guys should be used to me saying that by now. So, the spring festival Imbolc is February 1st. Now, I mentioned, I don't remember exactly how I mentioned it, but I mentioned it in my Yule video that gift giving was not a part of Yule. That was something that very much came from. It was adopted from other practices, and it came from. It was more a result of commercialism. So that was not entirely true, and I had it in my notes, and it wasn't until after that I uploaded the video that I realized that I had messed up. So, but I'm rambling, and we'll get into what I mean. But here's the deal. Imbolc is the coming of spring festival. Now, in modern neo-paganism, it's referred to as Saint Brigade's festival, and that was a festival that was implemented by the Catholic Church. So, Saint Brigade's festival is like a spring procession, but Imbolc, I believe, the first. And again, I don't have all my notes and stuff on me, so I'm more or less rambling and just doing this all from memory. But Imbolc dates back to I think 800 BCE, so before current era, and the original festivals were called the Procession of Brigade, and I don't have the Gaelic translation for that, so you guys are gonna have to forgive me. But Imbolc has pretty much universally been celebrated roughly around this time every year. Every culture celebrated it within about 10 days of what is now February 1st. Obviously, then it would have been an entirely different name for that period because they usually named based on the solstice periods, not based off of months or amount of time in a year. Anyhow, so it was called the Procession of Brigade, and it was more or less a welfare check, and it was where communities would go around, and sometimes they would even have a young woman dress and pretend to be Brigade. And I actually think that there is still some areas of the world where this is done, or it was at least done until very recently. There are still some places that do still do the procession, but it's only been recently reinvigorated. Whereas before, I think the 18th century, 19th century was probably the last time that they did it. And a young woman would dress and pretend to be Brigade, and she would have a shield and a cross and a helm that were all made of reeds or whatever grass was available in the area that could be woven together into these things. And they would walk through the village and sing. And there was even a point where, after the Catholic Church had influenced heavily in the pagan environment, where they would send children door to door to collect pennies for the poor. And it's because, so Brigade is in Catholicism, Saint Bridget is a saint of purity, which is interesting because in Gaelic myth, Brigade is a fertility warrior and a spring goddess. So that's, you know, but Imbolc is the celebration coming into spring, preparing for spring. And the procession of Brigade would go through villages and do a welfare check. They'd go and they would check on their loved ones. They would go and check on people within the village, see how they're faring as winter was reaching its end. And this would be done in many areas. As I said, there would be a procession of people, one of whom who would pretend to be Brigade, and then the others would pretend to be her guards, and then they would go through the town and check on everybody. It was a very big festivity, and then huge pyres would be lit so that to announce the feast. Now, technically, Imbolc starts the day of February 1st. So a lot of people celebrate it on February 1st, but it technically begins on January 31st. And the procession starts that evening. It starts in the night, and then as soon as midnight hits, the fires were lit, and then all throughout the day there would be welfare checks and there'd be little games, and there would be sort of like a middays feast, where there would be an eating of berries and flower petals, which I know is weird, but that was actually a very common thing in a lot of pagan practices, was eating of flower petals for ritualistic or for health or festive reasons. There's a lot on this, and like I said, I don't have my notes. I'm sorry, this is so unrefined, guys. I just wanted to make sure that you can still get this video. It's already a day late, and I apologize. I didn't want it to be late, but I've had a hard time finding places to set up my work stuff and not to be, in everybody's stuff. Anyways, so once that was done, the evening, usually right as the sun started to set, there would be a festival, and this is when the big pyres. So there would be big braziers lit the night before, but then they would have large crust stacks of fire, and these would be lit in the evening, and there would be dances that would go on all through the night, as long as the as long as the fires were going, there was dancing and feasting and drinking and music. And this was in celebration of welfare. And this, of course, was only if nobody died. Now, if anybody died, there was actually always a second set of pyres that were prepared, so that if anybody had died during the harsh winters, the bodies would be taken out and they would be burned. And during the evening festival, during the celebration, their ashes would be scattered. And that was also another very common practice. And there was usually a place where those ashes would be laid or buried, or a river where they would be dumped into. And this was primarily a practice in like Sweden and Scandinavia, but there were areas in Sweden and Scandinavia, like Sweden and Norway. But this was also practiced some places in Southern Ireland, as well as Scotland and Wales. So the Celtic, the Gaels, the Gauls, and the Norse and the Swedes would all... I don't even know if Swedes is technically the correct way to say that, but that's what my grandfather always said, so that's what I say. So there would be a place where those ashes would be dumped. But anyways, so the traditional feast around this time was birds. And during the time of the festival, and this is where my grandfather, and where I believe the idea of eating like turkeys and quail and even goose and duck during the time of Christmas, because in many places in Europe it wasn't turkey, it was goose and duck for like Thanksgiving, but in pagan culture, Imbolc was the time when it was berries, so like cranberry sauce, berries, and bird meats. That's primarily what was eaten during this time. And then there would of course be dances, and there would be music that was played, and it always had to be upbeat and festive, even if there was a funeral that happened. It was always a celebration of what life was, because even if somebody did die, their body was going to revitalize the earth around, and it would fertilize the soil, and it was always a celebration of new life, even in times of death. There was times of mourning, and those would happen, of course, during the sending off of the soul, but always, 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 it was a time of celebration. So they would jelly berries, they would cook birds, and that was what the feast was. Now, here is the part that links to Yule or Christmas. During this time, during Imbolc, just before the sun went down, there would be an exchange of gifts for no other reason than just in good spirit. People would make these gifts. They would, later on, of course, when shops and things became a part of culture, they would be bought. But usually it was gifts of food, it was gifts of jewelry or stones. Sometimes it would be gifts of weapons, and they would be exchanged during Imbolc in celebration of survival, more or less. And it was... Imbolc is more or less the time when you check on the well-being of those you care about. And so take that time. Technically, the celebration of Imbolc is a week long, so I know I didn't upload this on the right day, and I wanted to, and I apologize that it's not. But check on your friends. That's how you celebrate. Check on your friends, have a little bit of a feast, and if you guys want me to post, say, like some recipes or traditional gifts on these, I will do that, and I can do it in my. I'll do it in my subreddit. I will do it over on Discord if you're on my Discord, and I'll throw some of them out on Twitter as well. And if you guys want to ask questions down below, that's fine. So the next big festival, I believe, is either. I think it's Lunesa. So it's either Lunesa or Belton. My brain is not working right now. So if you guys want the next cultural festival video, and there are other smaller festivals as well. So if you guys want more cultural festival videos, or even like some more daily pagan videos, let's say give me 50 likes down below, and I'll know you guys want another festival video. 50 likes, and leave any questions or comments you might have down below. I love you guys. Stay bloodthirsty, my friends. And I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.